can!
It's almost!
He's done it again! Unbelievable!
Oh, straight into the roof of the net.
Nice one.
Straight down the middle. So a good performance.
Hi, you're watching Firstpost. I'm Rupha Ramani. Let's get started. On the show today, popular sentiment is that the man to blame in India's woeful slide in Test cricket is head coach Gautam Gambhir. But what is the logic and where should the buck really stop when we come to something like this? Also, does the coach under fire have supporters at all? More on that heading your way. The FIFA World Cup continues to be in the news. The draw ceremony is coming up, but that's not the headline grabber. Carney is set to make an appearance there in a chance to rub shoulders with US President Donald Trump. Will there be a handshake or will it make a headline? And the Indian city of Ahmedabad gets the official nod as the host for the Commonwealth Games 2030, a huge step towards India's ambitions of being an Olympic host eventually. But the biggest step towards that is building a strong, safe and rich sporting ecosystem. With the death of a national basketball player owing to a faulty pole shocking everyone, how far away is India from the actual ground reality? But first, headlines on Sports 360. Starting with cricket, the International Cricket Council have given their verdict on the Perth pitch, the same venue where the first Ashes test ended in 2 days. Cricket's governing body has called it very good. Under ICC's 4-tier rating system, that's the highest. This despite the first test being the quickest finishes in the 137-year-long history of the Ashes. India's Jemimah Rodriguez will miss the remainder of the Women's Big Bash League. The World Cup winner has requested her side to let her continue to be with her India teammate Smriti Mandhana back home. Jemimah, in fact, had flown back after her side Brisbane Heat's clash against Hobart Hurricane 10 days ago. On to football and the Champions League. Arsenal beat Bayern Munich 3-1 in the group stages. The Gunners opened the scoring, but the German club equalized within 10 minutes. Noni Maduaki gave Arsenal the lead. Gabriel Martinelli scored the winner. In another game, Liverpool's poor run continued as they lost to PSV 4-1. The Reds have now lost 7 matches in their last 10 games. Real Madrid star Kylian Mbappe has broken another Cristiano Ronaldo club record. The footballer scored the quickest hat-trick for the Spanish Giants in the Champions League. During the 4-3 win over Olympiacos, Mbappe scored 3 goals inside of 7 minutes, bettering Ronaldo's record of 11 minutes set in 2015. And summing it up with chess, Uzbekistan's Javokhir Sindarov has become the youngest World Cup winner at 19. He beat China's Wei Yi in the final. He dethroned Levon Aronian, who set the record at 23 in the year 2005. Sindarov took home a prize money of $120,000 and has qualified, more importantly, for the candidates event. Postmortems are crucial, but only if they are productive. They lead to some sort of a resolution and keep the conversation going. So we can eventually arrive at what's gone amiss for the Indian men's cricket side, especially the test team. In this case, seems like there's a clear divide in where the fault lies. Public sentiment is large and fingers are pointing towards head coach Gautam Gambhir. But he has his supporters in some very strong senior voices in the Indian cricket fraternity. So where does the buck really stop? Now, there is one good thing coming out of this whitewash. Is there any at all, you may wonder? There is. That the BCCI, the Indian Cricket Board, won't take any drastic steps just yet. They are waiting, and in their own words, there will be no knee-jerk reactions. Good so far, but there's more. They have taken note. There is a sense of acknowledgement that work has to be done, and there is a need for repair. So where does the axe fall? Cricket functions very differently compared to other team sports like football. In football, the coach or the manager is who takes all the calls largely. The buck stops with him because the reins of a team are in his or her hands. In cricket, it's a little different. Although a coach can be well equipped to be the decision maker, a lot of the strategizing happens on the field. So the captain, alongside his core, take those calls, and it's minute by minute. But safe to say, the synergy between the coach and captain is essential. That's what really makes all the difference. We saw that during the Gary Kirsten and MS Dhoni era. Kirsten was the perfect foil and the result was a World Cup India had never won in decades. Ravi Shastri and Virat Kohli, it was not about Shastri teaching them how to bat or bowl, it was about what he could contribute as a mentor and a man manager, how he can motivate that dressing room. We've heard enough and more anecdotes of exactly this. That series win against Australia down under is testament to it. Of course, credit also to Ajinkya Rahane for stepping up during that tour. Switch to the pair that followed up. Rohit Sharma and Rahul Dravid synced immediately and the result was a T20 World Cup. We've heard both of them singing praise of each other. These are not just tales I'm narrating, they represent facts, the hard truth. And of course, it resulted in a T20 World Cup win, which was memorable. Now, sure, it has not been too long since Gautam Gambhir took charge here, but he made some moves soon after. And that tells me he's the man in charge. And this is how he wants things to be. Leaving out certain players, bringing in certain others, that's clearly not just the skipper's call here, especially since he's a young leader himself. And in Gambhir's own words, this stint so far has been a grand success.
I'm the same guy who got results in England. And I'm the same guy under whom won Champions Trophy and Asia Cup as well. Yes, this is a team which has less experience. They need to keep learning and they are putting everything possible to turn the tide.
So logic here is, if you take the praise, you might as well have to take the big bats. You do not need to look too far for that. India's test record is for everyone to see. This is what they've won, of course, so far. They've won 2 series against Bangladesh, and of course, that comes later on as well. But as you look at the series coming up, that's the only win, and after that, there's a string of losses against New Zealand, against Australia. The one against New Zealand hit them hard because that was at home, a whitewash. The positive, of course, is the way the team really came from behind and clawed their way back and gave England a fight in that away series. That was a landmark one. A series win against West Indies doesn't really say much, but then, of course, that glaring whitewash against South Africa. Which brings me back to the point I started with. Where does the buck stop here? Senior cricketers Sunil Gavaskar and R, Ashwin, to name a couple, backed the coach and put the blame squarely on the players. To them, it was all downhill thanks to lack of application, no adaptation, lack of intent, and the team just not showing up when it really mattered. But it cannot be just that, can it? There has to be a combination of various factors that amount to India not being able to win at home, almost seeming like they've forgotten how to do it or get it right. While the execution ends on the field, truth is it begins in team meetings and selections before it. Are the players secure? Do they understand and know what their roles exactly are? Sure, it's important to be able to do what the team asks and demands of you, no matter the situation. That's what international cricket is about, or any sport for that matter. But at what stage in your career exactly, and for how long? Because not everyone can be a Rahul Dravid in a test format or KL Rahul in the shorter formats. Even they were given some time in. And doesn't a lack of role definition point to just more confusion? Where should certain players bat? What about the ones who are performing and have suddenly been dropped? What's the communication like in that dressing room? Is it as transparent and brazen as the press conferences seem? These are some questions that really need answering. And this is just at the surface of it all. Constant changes, some unfortunately due to injuries, also add to the woes. Basically, the foundation itself then is precariously unstable. A heartening thought was the captain Shubman Gill's tweet after the series asking everyone to keep the faith and they'll continue to perform. But we have all probably reached a point where words alone are not enough. The larger point to ponder is this: how solid can an execution truly be if the blueprint itself is patchy? Canada, America and Mexico are gearing up to co-host the 2026 FIFA World Cup. But behind the glossy promos and stadium fly-throughs, reality is far from perfect. Immigration feuds, tariff wars, political posturing, basically a full-blown North American soap opera. Sporting fixtures, well, also turning into battlegrounds, full of jibes and controversies. And that leads me to one unavoidable question. If the hosts can't get along, how will they deliver the biggest World Cup in history together? But in this diplomatic storm comes a tiny sliver of hope. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is set to meet US President Donald Trump next week in Washington, not at a summit, not at a bilateral, but during the FIFA World Cup draw. Football once again forcing politics to share the table. Now, as the eyes of the world shift to this meeting, we ask, will it thaw tensions? Or will it pour more fuel on an already simmering fire? Now, ever since Donald Trump walked back into the Oval Office, America's relations with its neighbors have taken a bit of a nosedive. The US-Mexico dynamics, walking on thin ice, ICE raids, aggressive border crackdowns, tariff threats, everything amplifying distrust. And then, of course, there's Canada, locked in a tariff war with the US, with economic friction spilling into public sentiment. These political fractures aren't just in newsrooms, they are visible on the field. Anti-America sentiment is now a recurring soundtrack across international sporting events. Boos, chants, banners, the message is loud. North America isn't united. And the leaders, they don't miss a single chance to hit back. Trump took shots before American failures in ice hockey. The then Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau mocked the US after their Four Nations playoff final loss. One off? Not at all. This has become a regular cross-border roast battle. But here's the irony. For all the political tension, sports has always been the one thing that has united them. Basketball, baseball, ice hockey. Canada and America share leagues, rivalries, champions, heartbreaks. They've built entire sporting cultures together, but lately even sports has turned into a bit of a war zone. Everything from NBA courts to NHL arenas has a layer of political friction coating it. Naturally, the question for the World Cup was simple. If the hosts are so divided, how do you unify the world? And that's where the Carney-Trump meeting becomes significant.
What matters is negotiations, when they re-engage. They haven't re-engaged yet, so that's the fundamental point.
Carney may have downplayed expectations, but the messaging, talks are coming, negotiations will resume. And that is massive, because historically, Canada and America have been the closest of allies. Shared borders, shared culture, shared industries, and yes, of course, shared sporting history. The only wedge between them, of course, is the ongoing tariff war. And if that tension hadn't existed, we'd likely see smoother cooperation, stronger sporting ties, and a more harmonized World Cup roadmap, just like earlier years. Remember, Canadian and American teams compete together in the NBA, the NHL, MLB, MLS, unequal numbers, yes, but symbolically, these leagues show exactly how strong their partnership can be. However, here's the gray zone. The real fear, what if this meeting goes sour? Trump's fallout with world leaders is well documented. Ask Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. That diplomatic meltdown was public, messy, and unforgettable. A similar one with Canada. The consequences won't stop at politics, because this time the stakes are bigger. Trade, security, culture, and the biggest World Cup to ever be hosted. A united front is non-negotiable. As we head into this week, eyes won't just be on the World Cup draw, they'll be on Carney and Trump. Two leaders who must decide whether the 2026 World Cup becomes a symbol of unity or a stage overshadowed by political hostility. Either way, its ripple effects will be felt across stadiums, borders, and billions watching in 2026. The Indian city of Ahmedabad has now been officially confirmed as the host of the 2030 Commonwealth Games, a defining moment, a major boost as India positions itself to one day bringing the Olympics home. But amid all the celebrations, there's a deeper, uncomfortable concern. How ready is India? Not in terms of ambition, but in terms of actual sporting deliverables, like infrastructure. In Rohtak, Haryana, 2 teenage basketball players died in 2 separate but eerily similar accidents. One was a national level player, the other an aspiring athlete with dreams as big as the country they lived in. Both gone, both crushed by collapsing basketball poles. And the most heartbreaking part, concerns over these poles had been raised multiple times, but the authorities didn't act. So before India marches towards hosting multinational events, isn't it time to fix the very foundation on which young athletes stand? Under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's regime, India's stand has been crystal clear. The country wants to become a global sporting powerhouse, so schemes like TOPS, Khelo India, sports scholarships and high-performance centres have all come into the picture. And when India shines on the world stage, the recognition is immediate. Cash rewards, public events, meeting with national leaders, the applause is loud and well-deserved. But the question is this: does that recognition translate through layers and levels right down to ground zero? Because what happened in Rohtak is a brutal reminder that something somewhere is fundamentally broken. Hardik Rathi, 16 years old, a national level basketball talent, was practicing on his court. He went for a dunk, the pole snapped and it came crashing down on him. He was rushed to the hospital, but the injuries were too severe. And this wasn't a one-off freak accident. Just 48 hours earlier, Aman, another young player, died the very same way. Another pole, another collapse. What's worse is that people knew, authorities knew, but warnings were ignored.
After repeated requests, the basketball equipment, including the poles, were not provided. His younger brother Pratik too is a national level player. How should I convince my wife Nirmala to send Pratik to train at the same court?
How do I send my younger son back to that same court? It's a painful question a father asks, and that's not just his fear. It's the fear of every parent who sends their children to a training ground, believing it's that safe space. Yes, India is rising. Yes, athletes are inspiring a new generation, but incidents like these pull the country 2 steps back for every 1 step they take. Because if negligence, even at the lowest levels, continues, how will India ever grow into the sporting nation it dreams to be? Not too long ago, India hosted the World Para-Athletics Championships in the capital. 2 foreign coaches were bitten by stray dogs inside the venue at an international event, inside a world-class facility. There was no security, no maintenance, no accountability. And the same venue, it has a proposal to be upgraded into a massive sports complex, a futuristic facility, a state-of-the-art hub for athletes. But what's the point of building something bigger if you can't maintain what you already have? And this is precisely where India struggles today. Not in ambition, not in talent, but in maintenance, accountability and continuity. The deaths of these 2 teenage players should be a reminder, a harsh warning that while India is eyeing multiple mega sporting events, there is still so much groundwork left to be done. The government's dream of making India a sporting giant, a superpower, must be implemented at every level, from world-class stadiums to small local courts, from Olympic-sized campuses to neighborhoods, basketball courts. Because while elite athletes get the applause, India must first create a safe, nurturing, reliable breeding ground for them, a solid grassroots system. Because hosting events alone doesn't make you a sporting powerhouse, winning them does. But you can only win when you're willing to protect and develop the athletes who will one day compete on those very grand stages. So as India celebrates the Commonwealth Games 2030 announcement, let this not just be a moment of pride for everyone, but also one of reflection, a moment to ask, are we building stadiums or are we truly building a sporting ecosystem? Time for last serve. Washington Capitals captain Alex Ovechkin was honored by his team for becoming the first NHL player to score 900 career goals. Earlier this year, he also became the 24th player to play 1,500 games. His kids were present to mark the special moment during a pre-match ceremony. And guess what? The celebrations doubled as Ovechkin scored in his side's 4-3 win over visiting Winnipeg. Take a look. That wraps it up here on Firstpost. I'll of course see you again tomorrow. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.
I wore the crown of a revolutionary. I promised to lift my nation. I claimed to fight imperialism. I became the very thing I warned against. I funded militias across continents. I feared my own shadow. Some called me the King of Kings. History calls me something else. The dictator. Who am I?